I watched my boss's empire collapse on live television. His face, pale and sweating, as federal agents led him out of his own building in handcuffs. Reporters swarming. Cameras flashing. His perfect world crumbling in real time. And you know what? I smiled. Because 6 months earlier, that same man looked me in the eyes, told me I was unreliable, and fired me for being pregnant. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I was nobody. He was wrong on both counts. This is the story of how a single mother with nothing to lose brought down a multi-million-dollar CEO who thought he could get away with anything. And trust me, by the time I was done with him, he wished he'd never learned my name. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. My name is Alice, and for 5 years, I was the top marketing director at Horizon Solutions. I loved my job. I was good at it. Really good. I'd built campaigns that brought in millions. I'd stayed late, worked weekends, missed birthdays. I gave that company everything. My boss, Richard Hamilton, was the CEO. Tall, charismatic, always in expensive suits. Everyone admired him. He was featured in business magazines, spoke at conferences, the whole picture of success. And I trusted him. I actually looked up to him. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified but excited. My husband, Mike, and I had been trying for 2 years. This baby was everything we'd prayed for. I decided to tell Richard first, before making any official announcement. We'd always had a good relationship, or so I thought. I walked into his office on a Tuesday morning. He was looking at his computer, barely glanced up. "Richard, I have some news," I said, smiling nervously. "I'm pregnant." He stopped typing, looked at me, and I'll never forget the coldness in his eyes. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "How long do you plan to be gone?" "Well, I was thinking maternity leave, maybe 3 months. 3 months. He leaned back in his chair. "Alice, we're launching the biggest campaign of the year in 4 months. I need someone reliable." My stomach dropped. "I am reliable. I've never let you down." He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Things change. People change. Priorities change. 2 days later, I was called into HR. They handed me a letter. Termination. Effective immediately. The reason? Restructuring. I was fired. Not laid off. Fired. And I knew exactly why. But what Richard didn't know was that firing me would set off a chain reaction that would cost him absolutely everything. And it all started with one email I found late one night that revealed his darkest secret. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at that letter. My hands were shaking. 5 years of my life. Gone. Just like that. When I got home, Mike found me crying on the couch. I told him everything. He was furious. He wanted to sue, to fight back immediately. But I was scared. Scared of legal bills. Scared of being blacklisted. Scared of losing everything while pregnant and unemployed. The next few weeks were brutal. I applied to dozens of jobs. But every time I got close, they'd call Horizon for a reference. And somehow, the offers would disappear. I started to realize Richard wasn't just firing me. He was making sure I couldn't work anywhere else. One recruiter even told me off the record, "Look, I don't know what happened at Horizon, but your former boss made it very clear you're not someone companies should hire." My savings started running out. We had a baby on the way. Medical bills were piling up. The stress was killing me. I felt humiliated, powerless, broken. Mike worked double shifts to keep us afloat. I watched him leave at 5 in the morning and come home at midnight, exhausted. All because Richard decided my pregnancy made me worthless. I spent my days applying to jobs I was overqualified for. Retail positions, administrative assistant roles, anything. And I got rejected from those too. But then something shifted. I was about to give up completely. Until one sleepless night, going through old work files, I stumbled across something that made my blood run cold. Richard wasn't just a terrible boss. He was a criminal. And I had the proof. I was going through old emails one night, looking for contacts, when I stumbled across something strange. An email chain between Richard and the CFO, David Chen. It was from 8 months ago. They were discussing creative accounting for the quarterly reports, hiding losses, inflating revenue numbers. My heart started racing. I kept digging. I found more. Emails about offshore accounts, fake invoices, payments to shell companies. Richard wasn't just a successful CEO. He was running a fraud scheme. And David was helping him. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. They'd been siphoning money from the company for years, falsifying reports to investors, manipulating stock prices. It was massive. Millions of dollars. Criminal on every level. I sat there, staring at my screen, my hand on my growing belly, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Richard thought he'd destroyed me, but he'd just handed me the weapon I needed to destroy him. I stayed up all night, reading every email, every document I still had access to from my work account. They hadn't shut it down yet. Probably an oversight in HR. Their mistake was my opportunity. I downloaded everything. Every incriminating email. Every suspicious transaction. Every piece of evidence that proved Richard Hamilton was a fraud. By sunrise, I had a folder with over 300 documents. Proof of embezzlement, securities fraud, tax evasion. Enough to put Richard behind bars for decades. But I didn't go to the police. Not yet. Because I knew how this worked. Rich, powerful men like Richard had lawyers. They had connections. They could make evidence disappear. I needed more. I needed everything. I had enough to hurt him. But I wanted to destroy him completely. So, I did something risky. Something that could have backfired terribly. I reached out to someone still inside the company. And what she told me changed everything. If you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon. I reached out to an old colleague, Lisa, who still worked at Horizon. We'd been close before I was fired. I asked her to meet for coffee. "Alice, I'm so sorry about what happened," she said when we met. "Everyone knows it was because you were pregnant. It's disgusting." "I know," I said quietly. "But I need your help with something. Something big." I told her what I'd found. Her eyes went wide. "Are you serious?" "Richard's been committing fraud."
"For years," I said.
"And I can prove it. But I need access to the internal financial server. Just read-only access. Can you get me in?" Lisa hesitated. She could lose her job. But she was angry too. Angry at how Richard treated people. Angry at the toxic culture he'd created. "He fired Jenny last month," she said quietly. "Single mom. 3 kids. No reason. Just didn't like her anymore." "Then help me stop him," I said. She nodded. "I'll do it." 2 days later, Lisa sent me login credentials. Limited access, but enough. I logged in from my laptop at home, my heart pounding. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Complete financial records going back 7 years. Proof of embezzlement. Evidence of securities fraud. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Fake contracts. Forged signatures. Richard had been stealing from his own investors, inflating stock prices, and pocketing millions. I spent 3 days organizing everything. Creating folders. Cross-referencing dates. Building a timeline. Making it so clear that even someone with no financial background could understand what Richard had done. I had everything I needed. Now I just had to decide how to use it. I could have gone straight to the police. But that felt too easy. Too quick. Richard had made me suffer for months. So, I decided he deserved the same. I was going to dismantle his life piece by piece. And it started with one anonymous email that would make his entire world explode. I started with the board of directors. I sent an anonymous email with just a sample of the evidence. Financial discrepancies. Suspicious offshore transfers. Just enough to make them panic. Within 48 hours, they launched an internal investigation. Richard was panicking. Lisa was feeding me screenshots from the company's Slack. He was calling emergency meetings, blaming David, trying to cover his tracks. But it was too late. The board was digging. And they were finding everything. But I wasn't done. Next, I contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission. I created an anonymous email account and sent them everything. Transaction records, emails, offshore account details. I gave them a complete roadmap to Richard's entire fraud operation. Then I went to the media. I reached out to an investigative journalist at a major business publication. I told her I had proof of massive corporate fraud at a publicly traded company. She was very interested. I met her in person, gave her copies of everything. She spent 2 weeks verifying it all, calling sources, checking records, making sure it was airtight. And then the story broke. Horizon Solutions CEO under investigation for fraud and embezzlement. Front page. Online. Everywhere. Richard's perfect face plastered across every news site. The Golden Boy CEO, exposed as a criminal. The stock price crashed 40% in one day. Investors were furious. Trading was halted. The board held an emergency meeting. Within 72 hours, Richard was forced to resign. But I still wasn't done. I filed a lawsuit. Not anonymous this time. My name. My face. My story. Wrongful termination. Pregnancy discrimination. Retaliation. Emotional distress. And with all the evidence now public, with Richard's credibility destroyed, Horizon's lawyers knew they couldn't win. They settled. Fast. For an amount that made my lawyer call me 3 times to make sure I understood the number. Enough to secure my child's future. Enough to never worry about money again. Richard? He lost everything. His job. His reputation. His fortune seized by investigators. He's currently facing federal charges that carry 20 years minimum. David too. Both of them destroyed. You'd think watching Richard lose everything would feel like enough. But what happened in the months after showed me something I never expected. Because the universe wasn't done punishing him yet. And what I built from the ashes of my old life. That became the real revenge. 6 months later, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. We named her Grace. Because grace was what I'd been given. A second chance. A new beginning. I never went back to corporate work. Instead, I started my own consulting firm, helping other women who'd faced discrimination fight back. I used part of my settlement to fund it. Business exploded. Turns out there are a lot of women out there who've been treated like I was. And now they had someone who understood. Someone who'd won. Within a year, I had 12 employees. All women. Many of them former victims of workplace discrimination. We built something powerful. Something that actually helped people. Meanwhile, Richard's trial made headlines for months. Every detail of his fraud exposed. His fake lifestyle. His lies. His cruelty. He was convicted on 14 counts. Sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. I didn't go to the sentencing. I didn't need to. I was busy building my daughter's nursery. Planning her first birthday. Living my life. But I heard through Lisa that Richard looked broken. Defeated. Like he couldn't believe this was happening to him. Good. Sometimes I think about that day in his office. When he looked at me with such cold contempt. When he decided I was disposable. He thought firing a pregnant woman would be easy. That I'd just disappear quietly. That I didn't matter. He was wrong. Here's what I learned through all of this. When someone tries to destroy you, don't just survive. Don't just fight back. Build something better. Expose the truth. Take back your power. And then, move forward. Richard fired me because he thought pregnancy made me weak. Made me vulnerable. Made me less than. But he forgot something important. A mother protecting her child? A woman who's lost everything and has nothing left to lose? There's nothing more dangerous in this world. Nothing more determined. Nothing more fierce. I didn't just get revenge. I got justice. I rebuilt my life. I helped others do the same. Richard's in prison. I'm free. And every time I look at my daughter, every time I help another woman stand up to a bully boss, I'm reminded. They can fire you. They can try to break you. But they can't stop you from rising back up stronger than before. That's not just revenge. That's victory. If this story inspired you or gave you hope, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice and revenge. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my situation. And remember, never let anyone make you feel powerless.